You hear me?
Hey, Bob. Can you hear?
Yep.
He's frozen.
You hear me?
Okay, your screen is frozen. Well, no, there you are. You're kind of back now. You're going in and out a little. You're a little bit choppy, but we can hear you.
Okay.
You can hear us, Bob? Did you say hello?
I can hear you.
Okay. You can hear him, but not great. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Bob. We can hear you.
All right, cool. Hey, Beth, could you ask Kim to give me a call, please? Hey, Leo. Okay, cool. Hang on. Can you hear me now? I'm talking to the iPad. All right.
Testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2.
I hear you, Lenny.
Okay.
Do you hear me? Okay. All right. Sounds good. If you see Kimma go by, ask her to call me. All right. Bye-bye. Hello. Do you hear me?
Hi, Bob.
Hey,
Hey, Bob.
hey, how you doing?
Hello, Bob.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. At least it worked this time. Monday, they couldn't get me in.
Okay, I'm now call the council meeting to order, and we'll have the invocation and council member Russ Touchberry have the
In prayer. Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you for this day, for this opportunity to be a part of the town of Somerville. Lord, we ask for your wisdom and guidance as we do business today. We also ask for us to be a reflection of you in all that we do. We ask, Lord, for your protection over the men and women who serve this country, both locally and abroad. And we just ask all these things in your precious name.
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Proclamations and resolutions. Ms. Beth.
Mr. Mayor, could you join us down here? And Miss Madeline? Whereas on July 5th, 2022, Madeline Robinson, Assistant Town Administrator, will retire after serving for 28 years in government, with many of those being here with the town of Somerville. And whereas over the years, Madeline served the town of Somerville as Planning Director and Director of Administration and Economic Development before working her way up to Assistant Town Administrator. And whereas the mayor, council members, and staff are grateful for the legacy of constituent commitment and excellence that Madeline Robinson has bestowed on the town of Somerville, and wish her many years of enjoyment in her well-deserved retirement. And whereas Madeline has positively impacted the lives of many employees, current and past, through her hard work and dedication to her position. And whereas the mayor and town council members wish Madeline the best in the next chapter of her life, which will include traveling the country with her husband Ed and visiting with her children and grandchildren. Now therefore be it resolved that the mayor and town of Somerville council members by this resolution express deep appreciation for the dedicated public service of Madeline Robinson, congratulate her on the occasion of her retirement after an exemplary career of 28 years in government, and wish for her a future blessed with good health and much joy. Done at Somerville, South Carolina, this 9th day of June, 2022. Next is Chris Mcrae. Whereas Chris Mcrae began working for the town of Somerville in March 2021, proving himself to be a leader among his peers and an asset to the Parks and Recreation Department. And whereas on May 21st, 2022, Chris Mcrae was returning from a movie with his wife and a friend when they saw a house on fire on Miami Street. And whereas Chris and his friend rushed to the neighboring homes to inform the residents, at which point they learned an elderly woman lived in the burning house. And whereas Chris went to every window in the house trying to alert the woman, eventually locating her and entering the smoke-filled home through a window that his friend broke. And whereas Chris passed the woman through the window to safety shortly before the Karami Volunteer Fire Department arrived on the scene and extinguished the flames. And whereas during the brave rescue, Chris suffered 3 lacerations, which all required stitches. Now therefore, do Mayor Ricky Waring and the Town of Somerville council members hereby resolve that the Town of Somerville recognizes the heroic actions of Chris Mcrae that prevented a horrific incident from turning even more tragic.
Mr. Mayor, next on the agenda is the introduction of Dr. Shane Robbins. Unfortunately, he is not here at this meeting, so we're going to skip over that and hopefully get to introduce him at the next meeting.
Okay, approval of the minutes of previous meetings.
Mr. Mayor, I'd make a motion that we approve the minutes of the previous meeting, town council meeting on May 12th, 2022, special council meeting, May 23rd, 2022, special council meeting, May 26th, 2022, and the standing committee meetings of June 6th, 2022.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion. We accept these minutes. Any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by raising your right hand and voting aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise? The ayes carry.
Next is the public hearing for the operating budget for the Town of Somerville, South Carolina for fiscal period beginning July 1st, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023.
All right, I'm gonna open this meeting for the public hearing. Operating budget for the Town of Somerville and for South Carolina for the fiscal period beginning July 1st, 2020 and ending June 30th, 2023. Public comments for items on June. Is this where we're going on that too?
We're done with that. We can go ahead and have Rhonda make the comments.
Okay. Okay, Ms. Rhonda. go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Just a few words about the budget that you have in front of you. This was the budget that was amended at the council meeting in May. As we have discussed, I have spent a great deal of time researching the revenue sources and have taken a conservative approach in these projections. As we've learned from the 2020 pandemic, there are many things that cannot be predicted. Having a conservative plan may enable the town to manage unforeseen situations. The total revenue projected before transfers in this budget is projected at 36 million. Our core revenues included in this budget are generated from property taxes and business licenses. Property taxes are based on 66 mills, up from the 59.5 mills from the previous year. Property taxes are estimated at 16 million and business licenses at 11 million. These sources account for roughly 75% of our general fund revenues. Other revenue items include franchise fees, intergovernmental revenues such as local option sales tax, and other items that flow through the state government. We have also projected some revenue from other services the town provides, such as planning, permitting, and other recreational activities. This revenue helps to offset some of the costs of providing these services. To complete our revenue picture, we also benefit from the transfers from other funds. We have budgeted 3 million from our hospitality fund, 2.8 million from ARPA fund, and we have other transfers from other funds totaling around 700,000. In total, our revenues are projected at 42,643,900. Moving on to our expenses. Our total expenses are projected at 41,488,900. Obviously, our personnel is our biggest expense. Included in this budget is an increase to the wage level of our public work employees. The starting wage was increased from $13 to $14.60. Also included is a 3% pool for public safety, fire, and police. All other staff has been allocated a 2% pool or COLA. Included in this is all expenses are going up. As we can all see, health insurance has been projected to increase by 6%. Regarding other operating expenses, there are no capital expenditures that are presented for approval in this budget. Operational expenses have increased by roughly 5%. I think half of that is due to property insurance and liability insurance increase. We have all added some increase for the cost of fuel, but I don't know that any of us know exactly what that's going to look like for the remainder of the year. The budget ordinance that you have before you then has a projected surplus of around $1 million.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Peter Gorman. I live on South Magnolia, Somerville. I wish to speak tonight item 9A on the agenda, which is your proposed budget. Proposing the biggest millage property tax increase since Berlin G. Myers was mayor, from 59.5 to 66 mills. This increase comes as a surprise to most of us, as there was no mention of a tax increase during the recent budget retreat. Instead, it seems to be a sudden reaction to a recent bond council comments on the impact of bond rating agencies to this proposed budget and the proposed TIF bond interest rate. How did we get into this situation? The town now recognizes that residential development does not pay for itself and that more commercial development must improve its revenue flow. We also recognize that Somerville is mostly built out and that new development must come from annexation. Where this becomes a problem is with PUDs. Developers naturally want to build out the most profitable projects, which are residential and not commercial. They argue that they need to maximize residential to subsidize later commercial development, like the Whitfield PUD, thus creating more revenue stress until commercial development comes online as much as a decade later. So the tail keeps wagging the dog here, and the town has been keep increasing other revenue sources to pay for the shortfalls in new residential taxes. You just increase the development impact fees such that a new resident impact fee is about $3,400. But is that enough? Mount Pleasant raised theirs to $8,000 to slow development, residential development there. Their millage rate is 3.9 and they have a balanced budget. So the town has had to keep increasing its operating budget to service these new residential developments. The budget has grown rapidly in the last 5 years from 30 million to 42.5. This is a 43% increase. The administrative department alone grew from 1.5 million to almost 2.8 million in these 5 years. That does not seem appropriate for a council form of government. Drawdowns on reserve funds for capital expenses have contributed to some of this budget growth. In 2017, the town had a $23 million surplus in reserve funds. Those have been spent down to the minimum statutory reserve today, such that there is no capital improvement expenditures planned in the next budget. We can also blame sloppy finance department over and under revenue forecasting. Some of the current revenue estimates were overestimated, while others appear to be underestimated by as much as $1.5 million. But now you're asking residential taxpayers to rescue the town from this perfect storm. Increasing taxes is not the answer. There are at least 3 reasons why we cannot afford this at this time. 8.5% inflation is harming seniors and retirees on fixed income and the low income the most. And that figure excludes gas and food. Drivers are fainting at the gas pumps these days. Last year's 5-year reassessment resulted in higher property taxes for most of us due to higher property valuations. And finally, DD2 is asking Dorchester County to approve millage increases to pay for teacher pay hikes. History teaches us that cutting taxes results in growth. Increasing them slows growth, as Councilman McIntyre demonstrated recently. Somerville already has one of the highest town millage rates in the low country. If you raise property taxes even higher, how do you expect to attract more commercial development to help balance future budgets? Why not ask voters to support a property tax increase in the form of a referendum? So how can you balance this budget without a tax increase? Cutting and freezing expenses won't make you popular, but raising property taxes invites a tax revolt. Rather than layoffs, use attrition. Freeze hiring. Eliminate the 3% COLA. I know these are heretical, but desperate times require desperate measures. Freeze merit awards. Eliminate new positions that could save you as much as $1 million. Delay capital projects like road construction. Some combination of these will produce the $1.8 million you hope to achieve instead of raising our taxes 6 mils. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Linda Haynes Wetzel. I live at 108 Atlantic Street. And I see that the tax increase that you are trying to propose on the citizens of Somerville is ridiculous. You have Dream Team. You have all these other organizations that the accommodation tax that you give them. Why don't you cut that out and use that money? We cannot afford to have something. We can't afford to have our roads not constructed because the highways and byways, we have to go over those. We pay taxes, we pay insurance, we pay everything else, but then how can we live? The pandemic, the last 2 years, it has been ridiculous. So many people have been out of jobs, can't even buy their food. And I work for an organization that helps supply food for people. Because you see the people that come in the line, white, black, Mexicans, anybody, young, small, and old. You cannot increase the taxes anymore. Cut your spending. $42,000 for a light for the tennis or what is it, pickleball court? $111,000 for a truck for parks and recreation. Sell some of that stuff that you're not using. That is ridiculous. If your taxes was increased, do you get increased taxes? You're gonna push something on us that we can't afford. I'm 69 years old, born and raised in Somerville, 307 North Palmetto Street. And you don't give a you know what. And I won't say the word, Mr. Mayor, you owe us an apology because you cursed on Mr. McIntosh the other week for the last meeting. Robert's Rules of Order, you don't do that. But we do not need a tax increase. You sit in your offices, you run most of these trucks that run around in the community, they're supposed to be animal control or whatever, parks and recreation. They do nothing. They spend gas that they don't need to spend. Wise up. When you sleep at night, wake up in the morning and see what the new day would bring.
Well, Council, I promise to be far less confrontational, but I appreciate your words. Everybody watching on the live stream right now that makes less than $100,000 and everybody that is in the room right now that makes less than $100,000 a year should probably be listening up really closely because as Mr. Gorman stated, we are facing record inflation right now. That's hurting people in Somerville, and gas prices nationally are nearing $5 a gallon. And the inflation that we have right now is a result of reckless spending in DC. Right now, it's approaching double-digit inflation, which would be considered hyperinflation. And in July, when the GDP numbers come out, it's expected to show that the economy shrunk a second quarter in a row, which means in July we'll officially be in a recession. This is what many economic indicators are showing. So these are the worst economic conditions in a decade. Which is why I believe this makes this the worst possible time to come to Somerville residents for another tax increase. I think it's going to hurt people. I think it's going to hurt fixed income people such as seniors. I think it's going to hurt low income folks. And I think it's going to hurt small business owners that are struggling to keep their businesses open and keep their bottom line. But I do want to repeat a quote from Mayor Waring from the last meeting, Mr. Mayor. It was along the lines, I have it here. It says, raise them. Sure, our citizens are going to suffer. Sure, low-income people are going to suffer more than the rich man. And I'd just like to make a quote of Brandon King, what he said when we were running against you in 2019. He said, we don't have a revenue problem in Somerville. We have a spending problem. So I would just like to politely ask, I know everybody here is doing this job with the best interest. I know it's not a job that pays a whole lot, and you guys are putting a lot of your time sacrifice to do this job. I know you mean well. I would just ask that you table this budget tonight and come back to the residents with a better solution than what we have right now. So I thank you guys and have a good rest of your night.
So my name's Elisa. I live in Robinson. I am the person that these two gentlemen were speaking about. I make at my job -140 a month. That's basics. I don't have cable. I don't buy stuff. I go to and from work and I just live. I work a second job to make up for the -140. I had 5 side jobs that just rotated throughout the month before COVID. They're all gone. The Circle Cup, the tennis stadium just came back this year. All the rest of them will not exist again. I didn't come here with some elegant speech like those two. I didn't have anything well written because I thought I was going to have to work. I skipped running Instacart orders tonight to be here. So I shouldn't have to do that all the time to live. Like, you come to my house, I'm not fancy. I have a bed, I have a dresser, and I have a couch. That's what I own. Clothes, I've outgrown my clothes. So now you're gonna take and increase taxes on something. You've already increased my taxes 2 times in 3 years. You're gonna do it again every single year, a little bit, because that's what has to happen. And then you're gonna do it again at the 5-year tax assessment. First time homeowner here, didn't realize that was gonna happen. Now I do, and now I've planned for it. But I just don't understand. My neighbor is a single female. The other neighbor is a single female. She's working a second job tonight, or she would have been here. This one over here is helping a friend, but she went to school. She went to the store today to buy a box of cereal and Jimmy Dean sausages for her brother that she cares for that is handicapped. $19 and some change. So any little bit that you increase this affects me. I can write down my money for you. I planned for the worst when I bought my house. I left extra in it, but I moved into Robinson where it was bad. I had people knocking on my windows in the middle of the night, so that got me internet, so I could have cameras, so I could sleep at night. That got ate up. Then you guys increased the taxes twice. The old car that I had died. When I bought my house, I planned for the worst to happen. I went and bought because I'm not a mechanic and I can't fix my own stuff. I can learn, but I'm too busy working to pay for all the little stuff that I don't own. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me why we'd be doing this right now. When I went for gas used to be less than $2 an hour. I work in Mount Pleasant. The store that I work at right now can't afford to let me go because they're short staffed to come over here so I can save on gas so it won't be as expensive. I don't own anything. I'm just asking for you guys to just wait. Like, I'm eventually not going to be able to afford the house. If you guys have a dumpster I can live in, or I'll be sleeping in the car. Like, I am the little person that they're speaking about. The lady next door is old. I'm calling you old, but like, they're retired. They can't afford. I still have the body. I'm the role model citizen. I went to school to become a dental hygienist, and I'd go back to that, but it didn't offer health insurance and it was wearing away my spine. So it's fixable. You could say, go get a different job, go do something better, but it's not that easy. Like, just think about the little person. I am the little person. I am the person who can't afford any more money. I can't. That little bit. Your -140 was before the gas increase. So let's just take in consideration that -140, and then I'm driving to Mount Pleasant every day for work. So whatever that, $41 in a Kia Rio. I'm driving a tiny little car. I don't have a big fancy truck. I don't have something that gas guzzles. Tiny little car. I don't know what anybody else has, but I'm the little person. I'm assuming everybody in my neighborhood is about the same. Like if they have a car, it's a little car. It's nothing big or fancy. It's not big trucks. They're not wasting away their money, but I'm doing everything right. Like, and I still can't afford to live. You guys took taxes, the 5-year tax assessment, and then you took taxes and raised it again last year. Why are we doing it now? You're going to increase it every single year, and you're going to do it again at 5. I don't want to be married. I've lived with enough crazy people, so I don't have the other person next to me that's going to make up for the little nuggets that you keep dropping on. I don't have that. I don't want that. It's not going to happen for me. I'd as soon be homeless before I live with anybody ever again. So just consider that, because those 2 people that came in here and wrote some great speech, that's me. I can't do anything else. My dream in life is to get my house paid off and give this world back a sense of community, because we have lost that. This tax increase is not a sense of community. You're doing it. Go to Robin Wynn, knock on doors, meet the people. You don't ever see anybody there. I first thought it was because when I moved there, it was a bad neighborhood. They had not done anything about the horrible stuff that went on there. And now I realize I don't see anybody because nobody's ever home, because they're always working. It's working class, blue collar people who can't afford it. So just take that in consideration when you do something. Remember my face. We're supposed to act as how God would. I need his help, because I can't afford for you to continue to just throw money at me. It's easy to just throw little nuggets, but it's not for someone who makes the kind of money I do. So if you have a solution to that, it'd be great, but increasing the taxes is not. Thank you for your time.
Hey, you all, my name is Diane Frankenberger, and I have a house here in Somerville, and I own a building in Somerville, and I have a business in Somerville. And when I first heard about this tax increase, I got really hot. I mean, that just infuriated me, but I did the math all wrong. So tonight I talked to Miss Jessie out in the parking lot, and then I talked to Miss Moore in here, and they told me what the percentage was. So I don't know if they're allowed to come up to the microphone and explain what I heard, because once it was explained to me, I thought, this is no big deal. Yes, it's a tax increase. You know what? I know you all don't have a time limit, but I'm not going to tell a bunch of stories. Old people get up and tell stories. But anyway, and I'm an old person. I'm older than you are. Anyway, so darn, now I forgot what I was going to say, but I might remember it. Anyway, what I want to say is that we need perspective. I don't know if they can tell you what the percentage is, but when I talked to Ms. Moore, she said on $100,000, it's $39 is what it is. I thought it was a lot more money than that when I did the math on it. And so, although I am in favor of taxes, I remember what I wanted to say. Once before I opened my business, there was an ad on TV, and it showed a young man with Down syndrome. And it said, Billy is glad that he pays taxes because he has a job. And I always remember that. I'm glad to pay taxes. If you've ever lived in a foreign country, our taxes in this country are nothing. We have so much here for so little that we give. I want to talk about the town of Somerville and what I get for my tax money. I get a really good police department. I get a great fire department. I get great services here. I have a business, like I said, here. It's, you know what? We're a military family. We moved all over the place. You don't have to die to go to heaven. If you can move to Somerville. As long as my tax money is used fairly and wisely, which I believe that it is. When I hear the reports, I used to listen to Miss Belinda give her report and the finances, and I thought, I am so proud of this town and how we do spend money. There's never been a scene or question marks about how we have spent our money. That probably doesn't make me very popular here tonight, but that's okay. I haven't been popular before. Anyway, thank you all for doing the good job. And if there's any way not to raise taxes, well, great. But we need some of the things that you all are proposing, and we need to pay, in order to have good people, we need to pay them a decent salary. I will say one more thing. There was a time when I didn't have even $1 in my wallet. Where's that precious lady? I took Crown Ministries, and man, that changed my whole life. I mean, it really did. So if I can go from nothing to something, anybody can do it. Amen, you all.
Been in Somerville for years. years old. I moved and came back here. Can't hear me? Okay. I'm Alfreda Sotomayor. I live at 118 Barshade Drive. Tears are almost coming out my eyes. I can't even afford taxes now. And you all are going up on taxes? Young man, young ladies, it's sad to say. What you're going to end up doing is having people lose their land, their houses. We don't buy medicine sometimes because we can't afford it. And you all are going up on taxes? I was home taking care of sister, and I have fibromyalgia. I'm in pain, but I told her I have to go. It almost brings tears to my eyes. You all are going up on taxes? Are you happy for that? Maybe you can pay it. But the small people that go in the store that has a social security check, I worked all my life and work hard. I was taught to work hard to pay taxes, buy land. My parents taught us to buy land so you will have something you can pass on. What are we going to pass on our kids if you all going to go up on taxes and take it away from us? Are you going to feel good when you write your taxes this year? Because they're going up. Every year, I pay my taxes and I do it on a payment plan. And that payment plan, it has never failed. You all been going up on taxes a long time ago. You just do it inch by inch, inch by inch. Because it will say my taxes is one thing, and by the end of the year, it says I owe you all more. So you've been doing it all along. You've just been creeping it up. I wish I had brought my taxes here so you could see how you've been doing it. It's never, I'm just going to use this the rough estimate, $850. That's what it says it is for the year. But by the time October comes, it's more. So you've been doing it all along, just creeping. If you're going to say our taxes is $850, then you need to leave it at the $850. Calculate it where it will be $850, not 50, 60 some dollars more after October. Please look back and look at what you're going to do to us as senior citizens. It should have been more senior citizens out there. I'm in pain out there, but I had to come. Because this is my little bit of money. I worked for my money. Nobody gave me the money. I worked, and I worked hard. When you write your taxes this year, and you fix this budget to add on, see how you're going to feel when you write your taxes. You should think about us as citizens here in Somerville. But I can sit down in my house and look at you have guys out there cleaning ditches, a machine. I had it on my camera, but I took it off. I watched them put a machine in the back of the ditch. This is where your money's going, but you put it in a budget to go up on us. Sometimes you need to send supervisors out and see how your people are working. In the back of the ditch, cleaning it up with a bulldozer, whatever. One guy on the machine, but a truck is parked in the front of my house with 3 guys in it, sitting in it, making their paycheck. But you want to go up on our taxes. Those are the things you need to start looking at. See whether people are doing their work when they're supposed to be working. Going on coffee breaks when you should have been working. You need to check on some things that's going on in Somerville. Don't go up on our taxes. We can't afford it. We're barely making it now. God bless all of y'all when you make this decision here. Because a lot, I can't, sometimes I go in the store and I say, okay, let's see here.
This is a need, but this is a want. This is a need, but this is a want. That's how I buy my grocery. Is it a need or is it a want? And I come up with less than I had in the boat. And I go to the food banks, and that helps out. You think I don't feel bad going to the food banks? I would love to have something good. I would love to look beautiful sometimes. Sometimes I don't even fix my hair. I wear a scarf because I can't afford it. I can't afford it. Please don't go up all the time. You can't afford it.
Hi, I'm Tracy Hirsch, and I live on Freeport Street in South Point. I'm constantly bothering Mr. Jenkins and Mr. Waring. I am also against this millage increase, which, it sounds like, oh, it's not that much, but it's actually a 10% increase on our millage, which is a significant increase and will hurt people. 2008, 2009, 2010, I watched people around me lose their homes. People, that you wouldn't think, and you wouldn't think it in South Point. I mean, it's a regular neighborhood. It's not a, fancy or anything, but you would not think that in South Point. Very concerned about the transparency of council, Mr. Waring, Mr. Jenkins. I did email Mr. Jenkins, and I appreciate he did spend time and I emailed all of council. He was the one that did respond back, and I appreciate his email back. But I'm concerned because, we presented this budget on multiple occasions, and then I'm watching the meeting and Mr. Waring decides that let's verbally amend the budget to increase millage by 10%. That is a significant amount, Mr. Waring. I don't know what you make or what you've got in the bank, but most Americans right now, we're facing we're at 8%. We're probably even more inflation. It costs me, I work downtown, so it costs me quite a bit in gas to get downtown. And I fight all the traffic on the way and on the way back. But right now, what are we at? $4.60 a gallon. So that's going to hurt everybody. Now, what's that doing? Have you talked to the local farmers? The farmers say we haven't seen our increase in food yet. That's going to come in the fall when they really see that realized of the fertilizer and I guess I don't know how that all works, but they explained it. It made sense. Talk to the farmers; they'll tell you. I think that there's a lack of transparency on where you're spending your money. I would agree with the lady that was just up here. I have seen town officials sitting in there running trucks, just burning gas away. I guess, if it's not your gas, if you don't have to pay for the gas, you could sit in there with the air conditioner on for an hour. And I guess, I don't know what they're doing, but I've seen the same type of situation she has seen. I've been concerned for a while about the growth in the town. I've been told it's necessary, but then I've also, South Point, we were kind of battling a little battle with the developer that wanted to put townhomes in front of South Point, which if anybody doesn't know, we're at 78, just on the outside of town, just before you get to Palmetto State Armory, which is a very bad traffic area. Well, we've been battling that, and then we find out from the Planning Commission that each one of these developments actually costs the town money. So I learned that from that process from you all and from, going to the Planning Commission meeting. So all these developments that council has allowed to come in or annexed in so they can put more development has been costing us money, not making us money. And what else has been costing us? It's costing us fire, EMS. It's been costing us traffic, roads, schools. We have all our schools are overcrowded. Even the new school, that's going to be overcrowded as well. So I feel like you've been poor stewards of our money because you've allowed so much building so quickly without any commercial building going in place. Industry, I know that light industry would be difficult here in Somerville, but I can tell you we do need commercial. Tried to take my dog to the emergency vet the other day. Guess what? We can't take you in. We have too many people here. You have to go to West Ashley or Mount Pleasant to the emergency vet. Any type of services like that in Somerville, you can't get because we've built up too much too quickly. And I mean, I've been saying this for a while. I don't know. I mean, that's just kind of more near and dear to my heart. And just, I kind of feel like you all do not always represent us. Maybe you're representing, I don't know, a friend or something, because, you know, I found out recently that now that the neighborhood, the builder and the property owner in the neighborhood that wants to build in the front of my neighborhood have been working with Mr. Waring, according to them, and Mr. Jenkins, to get this through county. That they could put, you know, instead of being annexed into the town and prevent, and, you know, causing that issue with the town, they're now getting it through the county with the help of Mr. Mayor, Mr. Waring and Mr. Jenkins. That's according to them, the report they provided to the county council. Now, my question to there is, who are y'all representing there, for one thing? And also my question is, will that also increase our taxes? Because then you will still have to provide services. And will it increase my taxes in Dorchester County? Because I'm like everybody else. I don't want to pay any more taxes except one who wanted to pay more. She could pay all our share if she feels that way. But, or, I mean, I feel strongly that this is something that was lack of transparency. You don't really, from listening to that meeting, you don't really know if you have a shortfall, how much the shortfall is, because I think I had written down, at one point you said we were in the worst shape in 50 years. One point we said we weren't sure there was a shortfall because we had a balanced budget. The next point we were at a $2.8 million shortfall. And then someone stated, I can't remember who, but there was a $4 to $5 million shortfall. So do we even have a shortfall? Do we know how much the shortfall is? I mean, I just wish I could just say to somebody, well, give me some money because I think I have a shortfall, you know, at any point in time. I feel like, you know, at this point, the town does not know what money they need. If they need money, they should probably just cut the fat like the rest of the Americans are doing right now. Stop spending. Go check out your employees, because obviously nobody is. This has been going, what this woman was talking about has been going on for years, not just recently. People are lazy. You got to check up on them. I don't know whose job that is. I don't know if it's yours, Mr. Mayor, but I don't know. Somebody's job has got to be to check up and make sure that these people are actually doing their jobs, because they're not. And, you know, that's affecting all of us. I kind of got off on a tangent there, but thank you.
Mr. Mayor, before closing the public hearing, I have a couple of questions for our finance director based on her presentation. And I don't know if anybody have any objection to Ms. Moore coming back to the stand so we can, I shouldn't say the stand, coming back to the podium. Sorry, Rhonda. And hopefully clarifying some things that are unclear. I'm really not going to cross-examine, I don't think. Mr. Moore, I may have misheard you, but if you just walk us through this, the budget that was presented to us at the two-day budget retreat in April, and then also appeared in our packet for the May meeting, that budget spends the same amount as what the budget as amended spends, correct?
That's correct.
And the budget that was presented at the two-day budget retreat and discussed thoroughly, and also was included in our packet for the May meeting, was balanced.
That's correct.
And it did not include a tax increase.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, at the May meeting, Mr. Jenkins moved to increase taxes by 11%, 59.5 to 66 mills. And that was approved on first reading. So we have two. My understanding is that 6.5 mills raises 1.8 million. Is that correct?
I think that's about correct. I can't.
I don't mean to give a math test. I don't want anybody giving me one. If I'm
I'm
not.
not sure if it was 1.8, maybe 1.6, 1.
Okay, I'll take your word over mine. So because there was no corresponding reduction in Mr. Jenkins's motion, we're now out of balance.
Right.
So tonight, we have to bring the budget in balance, because we can't pass it on, it's illegal. We have to pass a balanced budget. So we either, and maybe other ways of doing it, cut spending. But we either roll back the tax increase to make it balanced, or we roll back some other expenses, some other revenues, transfers in most likely, or we cut spending. So what I was confused about is I thought you said that currently the budget is $1 million out of balance. Wouldn't it be 1.6, 1.8, whatever it is that 6.5 mils raises?
I didn't increase it the whole 1.6 when I did my projections. I looked at, on the real estate side, I did also account for, we don't collect 100% of what the assessment actually does. So I rolled that back a little bit.
Gotcha. Now I understand.
And I didn't roll all of it into the vehicles because we hit a pretty high level this year on vehicles, not knowing if some of the bigger gas guzzling vehicles might decline. Maybe there's not going to be as many new car purchases. Value on vehicles goes down, typically not up on real estate.
So what you're describing, and this is what I love about you, so what I loved about Belinda, she's still here. What you're describing is being conservative in your revenue projections.
Absolutely.
And when you're conservative in your revenue projections, often you raise more money than you anticipated. That's the idea. Okay, so this idea of using ARP money, my understanding is that the intent of Mr. Jenkins' motion, although it didn't state it, was to roll back the amount of ARP money used from 2.8 million to a million. I mean, I don't mean you to read Mr. Jenkins's mind, but he says correct. So if we used $1 million from ARP on paper, $1 million transfer from fund balance, really, because ARP money goes into fund balance, and we project conservatively in our revenue projections, it's possible that we might not use penny of $1 million. And we've had, you've seen our old audits. We've had revenues come in at more than $1 million of projections back when Ms. Belinda was making the projections. You've seen that, haven't you? Okay. Thank you very much. But I really was confused about $1 million.
Any more comments out of the public hearing? If not, that'll be closed.
Right, Mr. Mayor, I do not have anyone signed up for public comment for items on the June 9th Town Council meeting agenda.
Okay, we're going to public petitions.
We did not have any petitions, so next is pending bills and resolutions. Second and final reading of an ordinance to adopt an operating budget for the town of Somerville, South Carolina for the fiscal period beginning July 1st, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we give second reading to the budget as presented at the last council meeting. That's with a 6.5 mil tax increase.
The motion is as amended at the last council meeting.
As amended. Sorry.
Second,
I'll second that.
any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, seeing as this budget is out of balance by somewhere between $1 million and 1.8 million, depending how conservative we are on our revenue projections, and considering that state law requires us to pass a balanced budget, where it's illegal for us to pass an imbalanced budget, I would move to roll back Mr. Jenkins's tax increase and move millage rate back from 66 mils back down to 59.5, which would balance the budget.
Mr. Mayor, I second that.
one of the reasons that I'm seconding it, one of the ladies that spoke, made a very good comment, something that's been running through my mind.
Microphone, please, Mr. Brown.
Anyway, I second that, Mr. Mayor, but I'm trying to explain why I'm seconding it, Mr. McIntosh's motion. One of the ladies who spoke made a comment. She says, it doesn't sound like the town knows how much money we need in the coming budget that we're working on. And we've talked about one American Rescue Plan balance in the budget. We've talked about 1 million, 1.8 million. And so I think what Mr. McIntosh just said makes a lot of sense. I don't think we should move forward with this budget because we really have got a lot of questions about what the revenue that we are going to project going forward.
Mr. Mayor, if I maybe heard one more time, I just in listening to the folks at the public hearing, there's just a couple of things that struck me that made really kind of made some points I've tried to make, but I just can't make it that eloquently.
And Mr. Mayor, if I could, oh,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
I'm
I
sorry.
thought you were done.
I will be brief. One, I guess a lot of things I'd like to speak on, but I would like to clarify something for some folks. But it still makes the point about what we're doing by raising taxes. We didn't raise taxes 2 years ago, not the town. We only raised taxes once since I've been on council in 11 years. We raised it 5 mills. I want to say it was in 2017. The next year, we had such a huge surplus the next year after we raised it 5 mills. We rolled back most of it the next year. But when folks keep coming to us and saying, you're raising my taxes every year, you're raising my taxes every other year, they're not making it up. Their tax bills are heavy or bigger every year. They're bigger almost every year because when you get your property tax bill, you're not looking to see if the increase is coming from county council, whether the increase is coming from Dorchester County School District 2 or from the town. It's the same tax bill. It's the same house that people are struggling to hold on to. What folks, I think up here on the dais don't see is that folks are struggling. They're not paying attention to the inside baseball of town politics. They want to be able to keep their house. That's all.
Ms. Mayor, if I could, for the last several days, I've been going back and forth on my vote on this. I did vote our first reading for this. There was a lot of questions about this, and one of my concerns is about the audit. And what is our audit going to show us? And it's very hard. I mean, there's things that we need in the town. Our police need a new station. We're really behind the times in upgrading our buildings, etc. But at the same time, we are going through economic hardships around this country right now. The cost of gas just keeps on going up. We don't know when this is going to end. And right now, I think it's a slap in the face to our citizens. Even if it's $39 per $100,000 of a house, that's $39. And I think it's just one more slap in the face for our citizens if we do this right now. So I will be changing my vote tonight. I've thought long and hard about this, and I think that this is what I need to do.
You know, had a couple of councilmen tell me to keep my mouth shut. That's what I will do. But I know how it is to operate this town because I've been involved in operating this town for a lot of years. And I guess this lady that's sitting back there on the back of the row kind of really hit me hard. But here's the thing, you know, we don't raise taxes every year in the town of Somerville. And I sure don't pay any attention to Mr. McIntosh, who sits down to the left of me. He says that we don't need to raise taxes. And he's been saying that, but he hadn't come up with a solution. If we don't raise taxes, what of you people who, which is by the way, a very few people that I'm looking at here tonight, when you're looking at 50,000 plus people who live in the town of Somerville, and we got just about, I don't know, maybe 30 people sitting in this room who are speaking for those 50,000 people. And we got 7 of us sitting here who are trying to make a decision for those 50-something thousand people that live in the town of Somerville. And we're trying to do the right thing. And that lady that sits back there, she made it real clear to me when she said that, you know, she sees people sitting in trucks and they're not doing anything. And I see the same thing. And I would love to have her come back to work for the town and be a supervisor for us, because I can tell you one thing, she would be one great supervisor managing our people to make sure they're doing their job. But unfortunately, we can't do that, because I see the same thing that she sees. And there's a lot of waste in government. There's a lot of waste in federal government. There's a lot of waste in county government, and a lot of waste in local government. I won't deny her that at all. But anyway, we've got to provide that. So if we don't raise these taxes, then Mr. McIntosh has not come up with one solution as where we're going to cut. Now, we're going to cut 30% of the police department, or we're going to cut 30% of the fire department, 30% of the public works department. Where are we going to cut? Because he's talking about a big cut when we're not going to raise these taxes. So, you know, I don't want to raise the taxes. Hell, I live in town. It's going to affect me big time. I own property in town. My children own property in town. It affects them the same as it affects every one of y'all that stood up in front of this podium and talked tonight. People that have way more money than I got. I mean, I don't want to raise taxes any more than any of y'all that stood up here and talked tonight. But when I look at this budget that we got to try to get passed, I know that if we don't do it, we're going to cut somewhere, which Mr. McIntosh has not mentioned that one time since we've been talking. He calls me Spending Ricky and Taxing Terry. You know, that's a hell of a thing to accuse us of, because there's been some of other council people that have gone along with us, but he had mentioned their names, and I hope he doesn't. You know, because I'm willing to put that on my shoulders and carry it. I've done it before, but he's not taking any of the blame for that. But he's not willing to come up with any solutions of where we're going to get the money to keep going next Monday. Next Monday. Not meaning really next Monday, but next year. You know, when we don't have the money to operate next year, because we don't have this money that we're talking about to raise these taxes, where are we going to go lacking? Well, I want to ask him where are we going to go lacking, because I'm not going to be here to help do that. But I've been here in the past and I've seen it happen. You know, he's and by the way, he probably won't be here either. He's just gonna leave it with you. Well, I'm sorry. I didn't vote for your tax decrease. I didn't vote for your tax increase. That's somebody else's problem. Hallelujah. I'm gonna tell you something. You got to pay for what you get. Every one of us sitting up here tonight pays the same taxes you pay. We're not bad guys wanting to raise your taxes. Every tax that we raise, we pay too. And we don't want to raise our taxes any more than we want to raise yours. And that's all I got to say about it. I mean, you know, it's just one of those things. We got ourselves in a bind. I didn't get, you know, he's named me Spending Ricky. I got it on my wall in my office, Spending Ricky. And I got it on my wall, Taxing Terry. That's a big thing he put out in Pine Forest Country Club, and the guy sent it to me. You know, it's on my wall. Well, I can't spend 1 penny of town money by myself. Terry can't either. It takes 4 people to spend a nickel. 4 people. So, you know, we can't spend any money. We can't spend a dime of y'all's money. Not Terry, not me. It takes 4 of us. But he don't bring anybody else into the picture. And I hadn't said anything to Bill about any of this stuff until tonight. But it aggravates me that he does that because I don't text because I don't know how. I don't use the Facebook because I don't know how. Somebody calls me on the phone, yeah, I'll be glad to talk to him. I love the town of Somerville more than I love anything. And I ran for mayor because I love the town of Somerville. I'm not going to run again. I hope Bill runs, because if he runs, I'm going to not support him because he hides behind a damn computer. But we need this tax increase for the town of Somerville to move forward. I don't know how we got behind. I don't. I just don't have any idea. But it happened before me, I can tell you that. It didn't happen because taxing Terry and Spending Ricky, I can tell you that. But anyway, we need to pass this ordinance tonight. We need to pass this tax increase tonight, and I hope we do, because we don't, God help us where we're going in the next couple of years, I can tell you that. And I want to say this too. I want to thank our employees that work so hard on this budget. I want to thank our employees that have worked so hard. I want to thank the public who has come forward tonight and given their support of how they feel, because I think you need to do that. And I sure want to thank you for that. And I thank our staff that's worked so hard. And whatever happens, happens. I don't have any disagreement with anybody. It's nothing personal. It's just business as the town moves forward. And I pray that we move forward in the right direction. And I thank you so much for being here tonight. And that's all I can say. Thank you so much.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to apologize to you, but I'd also like to clarify something, because there's some real confusion here. I should not have called you Spending Ricky, and I shouldn't have called Councilman Jenkins Taxing Terry. But that was a private text between you, me, and Councilman Jenkins. I sent it to the 2 of you the night of the May 12th council meeting. I never shared it with anyone. Nobody from Pine Forest Country Club sent that to you. I sent it to you. It was inappropriate, and I apologize. Nobody's seen that text except me, you, and Councilman Jenkins. Almost no. Anyway, substantively, Mr. Mayor, I've been trying to provide all of council with the data, with the numbers. The bottom line is this. In 2015, the last year that Bill Collins was in office as mayor, we collected 25.5 million in general fund revenues and ran 1.5 million surplus. This budget that's ending in 21 days collects 33.8 million in general fund revenues and is projected to run a $4.7 million deficit. We've gone from collecting 25.5 million a year in general fund to 33.8 million in general fund revenues in just 7 years. That's an increase of 8.5 million, or 1/3. We collect 1/3 more in general fund revenues than we did just 7 years ago. But we've gone from running $1.5 million, $1.5 million surplus under Mayor Collins to 4.7 million this year. We don't have a revenue problem in the town of Somerville. We have a spending problem. We have a patch for this year. We had a Band-Aid for this year. We spent 2 days in budget retreat with a balanced budget that didn't raise taxes, and there was not one discussion, even in executive session when we got to push the public out and turn the live streaming off, even in executive session, no discussion for 2 days of a tax increase. We had a balanced budget that didn't raise taxes. Is that kicking the can down the road? To some extent it is. But $2.8 million, if that's the actual hole in spending, I think it's a lot less. It's for a lot less for the reasons that Ms. Moore indicated. Her revenue projections are conservative. Whatever that hole is that would be filled by American Rescue Plan funds will have to be addressed next year. That's clear. But we're bringing in 1/3 more revenue than we did 7 years ago, 8.5 million more a year than we did 7 years ago without raising taxes. That's where you cut. What are we spending on now that we weren't spending on in 2015? But that 2.8 million or less is nowhere near 30% of our budget. It's closer to 5%. I don't want to cut anything from public safety. I don't think we have to cut anything from public safety. But I know Chief Waring not as well as you do. I know Chief Wright. I've known him for 20 years. They could, if they had to, they could find 3%, 4%, 5% of their budget to cut. There's not an organization in America with millions of dollars in their budgets that can't be cut 3% or 4% or 5%. I don't want to do it. I don't want to cut public safety, but to cut $2.8 million or less this time next year, that's easy when we're spending 1/3 more than we did 7 years ago.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I'm going to try to put in perspective at least some thoughts on where I feel we stand, and a lot of what I'm going to say agrees with what Mr. McIntosh had just said. If we and just some information, I think, so that everybody grasps what some of the numbers are. If we took the town in 2015, which is a reference point that Mr. McIntosh has used, which I think is a good one. And we had the number of employees that we had then and added not one till now. And we had a 3% wage increase per year. And whatever our health insurance goes up, our budget costs for personnel, which is about 80% of our budget, okay? So there's maybe a bit more than that. So there's no making up $2.8 million or $4.7 million different numbers that have been shown without dealing with personnel. But from 2015 to 2000 and this year's budget, costs for those employees would have gone up $3 or $3.5 million. Up with the scenario of a 3% wage increase and what we're doing with health insurance. As I look at it, we've added about 100 people, give or take, since then. Has that been excessive? I think that gives reason for pause to look at where we are. But we actually are where we are right now. And so when I look at it and say, how do we, with the magnitude of the problem, how do we solve the problem that we have in town? We obviously have to look at how do we increase revenue, which Mr. McIntosh mentioned, and we're trying to do that through commercial, retail, light industrial. Just takes, unfortunately, longer than we would like. But we've also got to look at what we've done in our departments. The $2.8 million, and we can argue about 100,000 here, 100,000 there, as the government says, that's just pocket change. But that does not include any capital spending. We have no capital spending in this year's budget. So a normal year for capital spending would be at least $1 million, maybe $2 million. I'm looking at Rhonda for some, $3 million. So the real budget shortfall is $5.8 million. So, as we look at that in a normal year, how do we resolve it? Now, I'm only going to talk about the 2.8 because that's real. We don't have a shortfall because we can use ARP funds if we so choose. That goes away. It could force us to affect fund balance in a negative way. But if we were to make adjustments in personnel to adjust for a $2.8 million deficit, everybody needs to understand it can be across all departments. Most of them are small, so you can't, they've got $600,000 budgets or $800,000 budgets. To explain it where I can understand it, I'm not professing to be the brightest light on the ship, but it would require closing 2 fire stations. It would require getting rid of 30 to 35 policemen to affect our costs by $2.8 million. That's just real. Now, do I want us to do that? Certainly not. Do I think that's wise and prudent to do? I certainly don't, because it's too radical. It's too aggressive. And my concern would be what do we do to public safety in the town? The same lady that is in Robin, I thank you for coming up. Thank you for pouring out your heart to us. But fires take place, and longer response time has greater catastrophic circumstances. The same with police and the number of police we got. So I look at our budget and I hate a tax increase. Some of us up here from the 2015 period, we've been here for different lengths of time on this council while this has become the issue that it has. You know, some have been here since 2015, some have been here since 2020, and some have been here since 2021. So we've all had different periods of time to look at the budgets as they went past. I am unwilling to take the cuts that we have to have and reduce the services that I think can be catastrophic to the town, at least until we get a chance to look at the budget for 6 months, try to figure out where can we cut back, what special programs might we have in various departments that we can no longer afford. Mr. McIntosh is 100% right. We have spending, I'm not going to call it a spending problem. We have spending taking place that we need to remove from the budget because we can no longer afford it. We need to do everything we can to increase revenues to help offset that as well. That's going to take a little bit longer time. We need time to look at it. I hate where we are. Don't know how we get past it.
Mr. Mayor, if I may. So I am you referenced the person who just joined council. This is my first budget process with the town, and I can tell you it's been very alarming. And I want to, really let you know, all of the folks who came here, whether you spoke for it or against, that you are appreciated and your voices were heard. The ones who are hurting the most, it was apparent, and it's very sad for me to know that that's going on in the town of Somerville. With that, Mr. Gorman spoke earlier, and one of the things he mentioned, and it's very obvious, is there are ways we could have prevented this situation that we're in today. And that was diversifying our tax base, strategic annexation, and really having a prioritized plan on where we put our spending. That has not occurred. From my education, my talking to the administrator and Ms. Rhonda, we are in a situation where through the budget process and the budget hearing, we had cut all of our capital expenditures. And what that does is that pushes forward a wave of more expenses that we have to face in future budget years. Okay. So for the people that are hurting the worst, I am concerned that you would get hit with a larger impact if we don't start doing the things we need to do today to be good stewards of our resources, to make a plan, prioritize our spending, and take care of the town's business efficiently, but also effectively, looking beyond our next election cycle and looking to where we want the town to be in 25 years, in 50 years. We need to look beyond our nose. We need to come together, make a plan, prioritize, have a vision, and then strategically move things forward. We do not take care of our facilities adequately. I've referenced the Cuthbert Community Center before because I think it's an iconic place in our town. It's a place when I was growing up, you'd lean your bike up on the Cuthbert Community Center when you played around in Azalea Park. That building is going to be closed down because we did not have enough money or planning or prioritization to take care of it. What's even more sad about that, if you're a business person like some of us are, we were told during our budget retreat that if that building was properly cared for and updated, it would return a profit to the town. Man, so not only we have something that could be an asset in our inventory that's great for our community that now we're shutting down. Deferred maintenance, we have no plan for asset management. Okay, we talk about no capital expenditures in this budget. Those police cruisers that are getting our officers around this town safely to protect and serve us, we're not improving any of them. They're not even on a logical maintenance cycle. We have no plan for these vehicles moving forward. All we're doing is kicking the can down the road if we don't start taking steps now, which cutting the capital expenditures in this budget, in my mind, is a huge cut, and it's pushing the can down the road. If we don't do a tax increase to start planning and prioritizing our spending and start closing that gap of this deficit, I feel that we're going to take this down in the wrong direction and cause a much larger problem on the folks, the citizens that are hurting the most. So that's all I have to say.
Hello, Mayor, may I speak? Hello? Yes. I agree with what Mr. Gorman said. I got elected in 2007 to try to stop the growth and increase impact fees, and wasn't able to get that done. In 2009, the market fell and people were hurting bad. So we didn't raise taxes. We didn't buy police cars, and we moved forward. And then after Bill Collins, when Mayor Wiley was in office, he and his advisor, Peter Gorman, decided to eat down our capital funds so we didn't raise taxes. So there was the money we had saved to do some things, and we paid down long-term expenses moving forward. And we did that 2 or 3 times. Then COVID came. So even before that, we reduced taxes. And in 2015, I think that's the only tax increase I voted for, because we had not increased taxes. The market was getting so bad and town was losing policemen and we couldn't run our cars. So between then and now, we have been using our general fund to support the town so we didn't have to raise taxes, in consideration of all those people that were having a bad time because of the market and COVID. But we can't stop building roads. Our citizens say that's our number one problem: traffic. I would love to start residential growth. I'd be fine with making apartments unavailable. They can move somewhere else. We do lose money. I agree with Peter on that also. But now we have not, as Councilman Touchberry said, we have let the town fall. We have let our home, in the name of not spending money, become old. And it's starting to get unusable. Our police department and fire department need headquarters. They have increased. Crime has greatly increased. We need more policemen. And using the federal funds that we just got as a birthday present isn't going to work, because these are long-term expenses that are not going to stop. And not giving people raises and firing people, we got people only making $14 an hour. And you're right, inflation is 8%, and they're getting a 2% raise. Is that fair? And the amount that the taxes go up isn't a huge amount over a year. I believe the sooner you repair the problems in your house and replace the old with the new, the less you spend and the better you live. I and Bill McIntosh fought spending that capital money because we're kicking the can down the road, spending money we happen to save for a long-term expense. I want to see the police and fire departments have a place that they can work and be paid a wage that they want to stay. Right now, we are a training facility. We train policemen. Then they go somewhere else because they can make more money. And then we hire some more and we train them and they go somewhere else. It has to stop somewhere. If we have, and I hope we do, have the over revenues that Councilman McIntosh thinks we will, we can change the taxes. We did it after 2015. We reduced taxes, I believe, 3 times. I voted for every one of them. And I voted against the franchise fee. So I am not a tax and spend person. I'm a we haven't spent and it's getting rotten, just like the Cuthbert Center. And in the future, do we tear it down? Do we lose employees? Or do we go ahead and start making repairs while we can? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor. Just one other point of clarification, not to make anybody feel better. Ms. Rhonda, the millage increase, somebody mentioned $39 million, $39 on a $100,000 house. Am I correct in saying that that is incorrect, that it is 26?
That's for a 6% property. Miss Diane has a business, a commercial
Okay.
property. And so.
Okay,
when
correct.
When I was talking to her,
Okay,
I was explaining that.
so on residential, 4% residential, it's 26.
Oh, per 100,000. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I don't want to presume that we're finished discussing my motion, but I think I've spoken the required, the maximum 2 times or more. I think we had another item for the public hearing. Someone sent Councilman Brown and me a statement and we gave it to town clerk. And I think it's my fault. I think when I called Ms. Moore up here before, it probably a second time to cross-examine her, it probably threw our public hearing well, anyway, can we, if we're finished discussing the motion, before we vote on my motion, can we have the town clerk read the statement of Mr. Brown and my constituent?
Mr. Mayor and Town Council, I apologize for not being here in person. Unfortunately, the Somerville Rotary Club has their once annual awards meeting this evening. I typically come to council asking for a tax increase. I am one of those people who has often said, raise my taxes. I voted for parks. I voted for libraries. I have spoken to you in favor of the ice rink and probably a dozen other tax raising items. I just want something in return. Tonight, I come to you against the proposed 11% millage increase. I come to you as a homeowner in downtown Somerville, an owner of investment properties within town limits, a business owner in the historic district, and someone who rents their office space in the historic district. I also come to you as someone who serves an underserved community as the branch manager of a mortgage company. Affordable housing, quite honestly, does not exist anymore within the town of Somerville limits. Rent has skyrocketed while income for the population who work for a living has not. Of course, we have seen record increases of home values. However, we have record taxes to go along with that. I recently purchased a $210,000 home in the town. It is a rental. My current taxes are $5,029 in the town of Somerville. If this same house with the same value was in Mount Pleasant, the taxes would be $2,960 after the $99 user fee. As the town of Somerville increases taxes, these get passed along to the consumer and contribute to use being more and more unaffordable. Mount Pleasant has a millage rate of 34.7, while the proposed Somerville is 66 mills. Mount Pleasant also has indoor pools and yes, businesses. Nexton even advertises that you don't have to pay Town of Somerville rates and thus have lower taxes, along with businesses that choose to be outside of Somerville. With this increase, we are only pushing more businesses away from our town, and businesses, as many of you on council know, are the only way to lower our millage needs. We grow the most in pain. We learn new habits on spending. We unfortunately have to say goodbye to some underperformers in order to reward those who perform above standard. And sometimes we have to do without. I'm not a formally educated person. Just like our mayor mentioned when touting his educational pedigree, I can count the number of days I went to college on both my hands. It doesn't take a fancy education to know that the tax increases are not the answer to our long-term success as a town. Without that fancy degree, though, I contribute 9.62 times the average to our tax base versus the average citizen. Our success hinges upon offering an outstanding value for what we offer as a community: affordable housing, a business-friendly environment in order to provide that value. Thank you for your time, Hunter Jackson. I do have a quick question too. Mr. McIntosh, was your motion an amendment to the motion, Mr. Jenkins' motion, or?
Yes.
Okay.
If I recall correctly, Mr. Jenkins moved approval of the budget ordinance as amended in the May meeting, and Mr. Touchberry seconded it. I moved to amend the ordinance to reduce the millage rate from 66 mills back to the original 59.5 mills. And Mr. Brown seconded it. I think we're finished discussing it. So let's vote.
Discussing your amendment.
My
Yes.
amendment.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, that's a motion on the floor in a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed likewise.
Nay.
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 Mr. Mayor, since my motion to cut taxes or to keep taxes the same has failed, according to Ms. Moore, who I have great confidence in, the budget as it exists now is somewhere between 1 million and 1.8 million out of balance. We can't pass the budget as it is now. I would move that we postpone second and final reading of the budget until a special meeting called either immediately after or contemporaneous with the presentation of the 2021 audit from our auditors.
And I'll second that.
Okay, motion on the floor from Mr. McIntosh. You all heard it. We got a second from Ms. Kimmer. Any discussion?
And just briefly, Mr. Mayor, we are out of balance. We need to get this right. Nobody was discussing a tax increase at the April budget retreat. We talked about it till we were blue in the face for 2 days, and nobody was, around me anyway, discussing a tax increase. The audit we should already have that 2021 audit. That was a year ago that budget, that 6-month budget year ended. Really getting the audit, the most recent audit you could get your hands on, and having the auditors present it to you is supposed to be the first step in preparing a budget. The second year in a row, we're on the verge of passing a budget without an audit. I would encourage anyone here or on the live stream to go back and look at our budget meeting from May of 2021, when we passed the budget without an audit. The 2 people responsible for it are no longer employees here. But this council was handed some projected revenues without a audit that were made up out of whole cloth. They were, Mr. Gorman's right. I don't know if they underestimated some. I know they overestimated some. And in that meeting, I'm asking questions. This doesn't add up. This doesn't add up. This doesn't add up. They asked for a 15-minute break. I think they were gone for 45 minutes and they came back with brand new numbers. Because there were no audit, they could put anything they want in there. We are so happy to have you, Rhonda Moore. I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that you would behave like those two former employees did. But we said then, we're never going to do this again. We're never going to pass a budget without an audit. Well, here we are. Here's our opportunity. We have to pass a budget. We have to pass a balanced budget. The law requires it. The new budget year does start July 1. If we can't get second reading until sometime in the first few days or weeks of July, we'll be all right. We simply instruct division and department heads not to spend anything new, no new positions, no new spending, keep operating under the existing budget for a few weeks, a few days, we'll be all right. The wise thing to do based on what happened to us last year is to hear from the auditors before we pass a budget. It's what we've done every single year before last year. The projections from Ms. Moore, which I mean, I have all the confidence in the world in her. And yes, she is projecting a $4.7 million deficit for this budget year. But for the budget year that's been closed for 1 year without an audit, the same person who I have a lot of confidence in.
I call for the question.
Is projecting a $10 million surplus on the 2021 budget that ended a year ago. Why don't we wait from the auditors and see if we actually had a $10 million surplus in the 2021 budget year? That just seems like the wise thing to do.
Call for the question. All in favor signify by raising your hand, voting aye.
Which question are we answering right now?
All those opposed?
Ho, ho.
What'd you say, Bob?
He wants a clarification.
Did Bill's trying to make another motion? Are we voting on the budget or Bill's motion?
The motion is to postpone second reading until we hear from the auditors on the 2021 budget.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
Okay. We have 3 that had voted in favor and the mayor has called for those opposed.
I'm opposed.
Opposed.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I move that we reduce the amount of ARP funding in the fiscal year 2023 budget to an amount that will balance the budget that is based on 66 mills.
Second.
Okay, motion made and second. Any discussion? All those in favor of this, signify by raising your right hand, voting aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise.
Aye. Or nay.
Nay.
All right. Motion carried.
Now you have second and final reading of the budget.
Okay, where's that at? Yeah, okay. Okay, now we got second final reading of orders to adopt the budget.
There was a motion made by Mr. Jenkins, seconded by Mr. Cuthbert.
Right.
So you got a call.
We already got a motion on that. Okay. Got a motion on that by Mr. Touchberry. Got a second?
It's Mr. Jenkins and then seconded by Mr. Touchberry.
Okay. All in favor of this, signify by raising your right hand, voting aye.
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 All those opposed?
Nay.
All right, the ayes carried.
All right.
Okay, second final reading of an ordinance to amend. Beth, read that from me, please.
Second final reading and ordinance to amend and renumber Town Ordinance Chapter 24, Streets, Sidewalks, and Other Public Places, Article 2, Picketing, Demonstrations, and Parades, Division 1, Sections 24-41, 24-42, 24-43, renumbering 24-44 to 24-45, adding new section 24-44, renumbering 24-4 to 24-48, adding new 24-45, adding new 24-46, adding new 24-47, Division 2 by renaming Division 2 and amending sections 24-71, 24-72, 24-73, 24-74, 24-76, and 24-77.
I'll make a motion. We approve that.
I got a second?
Second.
Okay, got a second. All those in favor of this signify by raising the right hand. Vote aye.
Aye.
Any discussion?
Okay. I've got some concerns about this. Second time reading this orders to amend, renumber the town ordinances. What I'm concerned about is whether we may be trampling on people's First Amendment rights. You know, as far as them exercising their free speech and right to picket and demonstrate and that sort of thing. The question I want to ask the administrator is this designed to make it more difficult for people to express their rights, express their voices, or pickle, or do parades or whatever, or just designed to make it easier?
Mayor, that's always looking at me. This ordinance was designed to make it easier for people to express their First Amendment rights. Real concerned with the way the ordinance was originally drafted. Somebody, say a group of 20 people wanted to picket, or they could take up to 60 days. Case law, Supreme Court said cannot do that. Anywhere from 5 to 10 days, you're probably okay, but closer to 5 is better. I think this ordinance will withstand the constitutional challenge. Yes, it is making it easier for people to gather and speak and protest.
Thank you. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I have a motion to amend. I move to amend the proposed ordinance 22-0502, an ordinance to amend and renumber Town Ordinance Chapter 24, Article 2, Division 1, by adding a new section 24-48 entitled Use of Public Facilities for Public Meetings or Assembly Other Than for First Amendment Purposes, together with the appropriate renumbering as presented in the June 9th, 2022 Council Agenda Packet.
I'll second that.
Now I have questions. Mr. Touchberry, what does your amendment do? I voted for it on first reading. I didn't know it needed amending.
The way I understand it, and Mr. Parker, you can correct me, but it adds the category where people are using our facilities not for First Amendment purposes, instead of just looping them all into First Amendment purposes. Mr. Parker?
That's correct. It was being designed for things for like parades, where you have to coordinate it between fire department, chief of police, and it gives parks and recreation, fire department, police department time to coordinate it, those types of things.
Are the changes that would be in Mr. Touchberry's motion already in our agenda packet?
Yes,
I can send them out by email also.
they're
Are
they're
both
highlighted.
versions in it? I mean, how would we have known? Just seems like we could have been informed in advance and not try to have to decipher it here on the dais. I mean, is the idea that if somebody's gathering for a non-First Amendment purpose, we don't have to expedite the permitting? Okay. I mean, it sounds logical. I just don't understand the element of surprise.
I apologize, but I'll look at my emails. I'll send it out to council. way before.
It sounds to me like what Mr. Touchberry is offering makes it more difficult for people to express their First Amendment rights. Am I right or wrong?
It says other than First Amendment rights.
Okay.
So the idea behind the amendment is that town staff still has the same time period for issuing what? Not permit. Issuing. I mean, I get the purpose of the amendment as passed at first reading. That if someone is trying to protest and we can nickel and dime and delay and delay and delay and they don't get their permit for 60 days. And, you know, by then they're upset about something else or the issue's resolved. Maybe they're protesting a tax increase and by then it's already gotten 2 readings in 60 days. So I understood what we're voting on last month, shortening it considerably, making it easier for citizens. I didn't know that it needed further amendment, but it sounds reasonable. So I guess I'm not going to oppose the amendment, but I mean, the way.
I'm sorry, Councilman, it was emailed out to us on Sunday.
And I guess that I mean, maybe I'm just looking at legislation wrong, but this is once something comes on our agenda and council gives it first reading, it's council's document. It's not staff's document. It's not the town attorney's document. And if the council member wants to amend it, they should prepare a written amendment and share it with everybody and explain it to them. I mean, an email from the town attorney on Sunday, 2 different versions in the packet, maybe that's appropriate notice, but it's not the way the legislative process is supposed to work. It's our legislation. We're the legislators. I'll vote for the amendment. It sounds logical.
This is for the amendment.
Okay, so what we voting on, the amendment? Bill?
Motion and a second.
Okay, motion and a second to amendment. All in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise.
Nay.
Motion carried.
Now there's second final reading of the ordinance.
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
We've got a motion and a second on that also.
Which one?
Hang on. Because we had a motion before Mr. Touchberry's motion to amend.
Yes,
Yes.
So we still have to vote on the.
that's what's before us.
Oh, okay. Yeah, second
Oh.
final reading on that. Okay. All those in favor of that,
Of what?
the first reading, the second reading,
As amended.
Second and final reading of the ordinance as amended.
right. All those in favor of that, signify by raising the right hand, vote aye.
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 Opposed likewise,
Nay.
motion carried. Okay,
Second and final reading of an ordinance to authorize the mayor or town administrator to execute an economic development incentive agreement for Project Wood in the town of Somerville.
I'll make a motion. We approve that.
Second.
okay. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by voting aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Ayes carried.
Second and final reading of an ordinance to authorize the mayor or town administrator to execute a quitclaim deed to the North Maple MBM LLC for the property described in the ordinance.
Got a motion?
Motion to approve final reading.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All right, motion second, person. All in this signify by raising your right hand, voting aye.
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 Opposed likewise. Ayes carried.
Second final reading of an ordinance to dissolve the Somerville Redevelopment Corporation.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move second and final reading of the ordinance.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I'm actually fine whichever way we go with this. I thought we had decided that it was better, since there was no expense involved in it, better for us to keep the redevelopment corporation in existence. Is there a reason that we do not want to do that?
Mr. Jenkins, no such vote's been taken by council in a public meeting. You may be referring to some other meeting that decisions are made in that maybe not all of us are privy to.
No,
I'm really not speaking of a meeting. I'm just speaking of general discussion that I have heard. I thought there were advantages to keeping it, so I will ask Corporation Council to.
Why don't we just let Corporation Council run the town?
I
agree.
We talked about that the other day. What's your opinion on that?
This is a policy decision. This is not a legal decision.
Bill, if you don't mind, I ask him a question.
One legal factor that comes into it, and that is that the RDC is listed as defendant in the hotel litigation. It's really not going to make that big of a difference. The attorney that was assigned by Smurf to defend that case, if he had his brothers, he would rather leave it open, but it's not going to give him heartburn if we close it out.
The purpose of the RDC was to own property, to hold property that was going to be part of a public-private partnership to build a hotel. That public-private partnership caused Mayor Collins to lose re-election, caused Councilman Jenkins to lose re-election. If they listened to me and Councilman Bailey, that wouldn't have happened. We no longer own the property. It closed last week. There's no reason for Somerville Redevelopment Corporation to exist unless somebody's got some plan I don't know about to have a new public-private partnership with some developer.
I am fine with that. My personal opinion of why I lost that election was because of Bear Island Road and not the hotel, but that's neither here nor there.
It was a perfect storm, Councilman.
All right, what's your motion?
The motion is second and final reading of the ordinance. Mr. Brown is second.
Second it.
Okay. All in favor of this, signify by voting aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed likewise? Ayes carried. Okay. I don't want to see that again.
First reading of an ordinance to rezone TMS numbers 136-1204-106, 911D Central Avenue, owned by Gary A. Sharpie, and 136-1204-108, 911B and C Central Avenue, owned by Leonard A. and Sylvia L. Holmes, two parcels totaling approximately 0.936 acres from GR General Residential, 5 units per acre, to NB Neighborhood Business. This is in Council District 1. The Planning Commission held a public hearing and made a recommendation for approval at their meeting on May 16th, 2022. The Planning and Development Committee voted to move the item to full council with a recommendation for approval at their meeting on June 6, 2022.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve first reading of this to rezone this property.
Second. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, signify by raising your right hand, voting aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
likewise? Okay, ayes carried.
First reading of an ordinance to amend the Somerville Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 3, Section 3.3, Table of Permitted Uses, and Section 3.4.3, Lodging. The Planning Commission held a public hearing and made a recommendation for approval at their meeting on May 16th, 2022. The Planning and Development Committee voted to move the item to full council with a recommendation for approval at their meeting on June 6, 2022.
Make a motion, we approve first reading.
Second.
Second. Any discussion?
Can we get just a brief explanation from, is Ms. Schuler here or? Oh, there you are. I get a lot of calls about these issues, so I want to make sure I understand it.
Sure. There's two main changes to this ordinance. The first is the change in the neighborhood mixed use zoning district to the owner occupied requirements. I'm sorry, I don't know what.
I'm not sure what that is either.
From-
I'm
it's not
looking at
from
one of
me
my
that I'm
four,
aware of.
I'm looking at one of my four phones to
I
see
don't
if
have
I'm
anything.
causing. I don't think
So the first is a change to the owner occupied requirements for the neighborhood mixed use zoning district. Currently, it's a conditional use and it has to be owner occupied even though commercial uses are allowed in neighborhood mixed use. And so the thought process was to, in discussions with the Planning and Development Committee at a previous workshop, was to base the owner occupied requirement on the surrounding uses around the neighborhood mixed use property. So if 50% of the surrounding uses are residential in nature, then it would still need to be owner occupied in order to have a lodging use. If they're commercial in nature, it would not. The second change is we noticed an inconsistency in the permitted uses with neighborhood mixed use, where, like I said, most of the lodging uses were conditional, but an inn, which is from 10 to 24 rooms, was listed as permitted. And so what we're doing is changing that to conditional and adding those conditions.
Thank you very much. They
You're
both
welcome.
make
But
perfect
just,
sense.
let me ask you a question. If you drop the requirement that be owner occupied as with residential and commercial, they don't have to have owner occupied. Haven't you moved from a bed and breakfast to an apartment?
No, sir, this is for lodging, not for dwelling units. So it's for short-term rentals,
And this is, and the
30
change,
days or less.
and the change that would relax somewhat, perhaps, the
Correct.
owner occupied requirement is only on parcels that are zone neighborhood mixed use.
That is correct.
And then you would look at the surrounding uses of the adjoining properties as to whether they tend to be business uses or residential.
Correct. And the question was asked in the Planning Commission how we would determine that. And it would be probably multiple ways. One of them would be an actual site visit to see, and the second would be to look at the tax assessments at the county level.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse.
Call for the vote.
Beth? First,
We have a motion in a second on that.
we do.
Yes.
First reading of an ordinance to amend. Okay, number B. Do we have a motion on that?
Yes, sir. Mr. Jenkins made the motion and Ms. Garden Schmidt made the second.
Okay. We got a motion and a second. Okay, all in favor of this?
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Opposed likewise.
Aye.
Thank you, Bob.
Where'd you come from, Bob?
I'm gonna take
Look
up a
like you're having
collection
a
for
good time.
Harry's razors.
Okay,
First reading of an ordinance to amend the Somerville Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 3, Section 3.5.2, uses customarily accessory to residential dwellings. The Planning Commission held a public hearing and made a recommendation for approval at their meeting on May 16th, 2022. The Planning and Development Committee voted to move the item to full council with a recommendation for approval at their meeting on June 6, 2022.
Motion to approve first reading.
Second.
Mr. Mayor,
Motion
Mr. Mayor, may I ask Ms. Schuler? I was not here in time for the Planning and Development Committee. I don't serve on it for the first time in 12 years.
So this item was brought before, again, the workshop with Planning and Development Committee previously, because we are having some issues with, in our amendments back in August, the size restriction was completely removed from accessory structures. And so we are now seeing some issues where we're seeing accessory structures that are either the same size as the house or even sometimes somewhat bigger, which is causing issues with runoff and other things, because we don't typically do a full review like we do with a new home on accessory structures. It has a little less of a review process. So we're having to do a full review and look at items a little closer. So to try and help people who just want to build a shed and not have to go through a full review, what we're looking to do is amend that again to add back a size restriction, but to base it on something that makes a little more sense rather than just having one set size restriction, to base it on the size of the property, because that's the issue we're dealing with is the runoff and stormwater. And so if it's a half acre or less, it can be no more than 50% of the footprint. If it's between a half acre and an acre, it can be no more than 50% of the total square footage of the main primary structure. And if it's over an acre, there's no size limit, but it does need to be at least a certain distance from the property lines to prevent runoff issues.
And does this include accessory dwelling units or just?
No, sir. Accessory dwelling units are a separate.
So this is
separate use.
sheds,
This is accessory structures that are not dwellings.
sheds,
Garages,
detached garage.
workshops, whatever people call them.
And I know we made a lot of changes in August, and I know you wanted us to go more slowly. But help me, the requirements that we just dealt with in the stormwater regulations that we all got a little confused on, with permeable and impermeable and all of that. And I think we caused Mr. Cornett to lose some hair. I mean, those stormwater regulations apply regardless.
Well, see, the issue is if you're disturbing less than half an acre, it doesn't fully come into play. And so that's why with these smaller lots and with accessory structures, it was causing us some difficulty with our review. It does say you can't put water onto adjacent properties. Yes, that comes into play no matter what. And our impervious surface is in our zoning ordinance. In the UDO, we do have impervious surface levels, yes, that come into play no matter what.
Okay, that was my question.
Yes, but the issue that was coming up was these weren't getting a full stormwater review, and it ended up they were causing stormwater issues because of their size. Even if they met the
and just
impervious
again,
surface
because I'm a little slow on the uptake, with this amendment, the new rules for sheds, detached garages, and workshops are.
Okay, if a property is less than half an acre, then the shed, workshop, the accessory structure can be no more than 50% of the footprint of the primary structure, which was what it originally was no matter what, before the amendment in August. If it's between a half acre and an acre, then it can be up to 50% of the total square footage of the primary structure. So say it's a two-story structure, it could be more. And if it's over an acre, there's no size restriction, but it has to be, I believe we decided on at least 50 feet from the nearest property line.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. All in favor of this, signify by raising your right hand, saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes carried.
First reading of an ordinance to sell real property of the town of Somerville, South Carolina, known as 118 West Richardson Avenue, Somerville, South Carolina, 29483.
Mr. Mayor, I would move first reading of the ordinance.
Second. Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor of this, signify by raising your right hand, going aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
likewise.
First reading of an ordinance to amend chapter 22, water management, flood damage prevention and stormwater management, section 22-124, stormwater control, item F, minimum runoff control requirements. Subsection 2D, the Public Works and Committee on Water Supply voted to move the ordinance as shown in the June 9th, 2022 agenda packet to full council with a recommendation for approval at their meeting on Monday, June 6th, 2022.
Mr. Mayor, since I was a royal pain to Mr. Cornett on this issue for about 3 months now, I will move approve it, and I'm gonna have an amendment, but it's not ready, so second reading. But for right now, I'll move first reading of the ordinance.
I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion on the floor and looking for a second. Got a second. Okay. All in favor of this, signify by raising your right hand, voting aye.
Aye.
Likewise, ayes carried.
Resolution regarding town expenditures at the Municipal Association of South Carolina annual meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move approval of the resolution.
Got a second?
I'll second.
Okay, got a motion on this, second.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, to explain the resolution, municipal association meetings are a very good thing. We learn a lot at them. We have an annual meeting every year in the summertime that rotates between Greenville, Hilton Head, and Charleston. And we have a regular midwinter meeting in Columbia. We have classes for us. I think everybody on this dais, well, Mr. Touchberry is brand new. You're excused. But everybody else on this dais, I think, has completed at least the first level of classes for the municipal association. I think most of us have completed the advanced diploma, if you will. I don't want to keep people from attending this year's meeting, which is in Charleston. But given the fact that we've been passing tax increases and fee increases left and right for about 3-4 months now, every fee to play youth football, to impact fees to what we did tonight. What this resolution says is since this year's annual meeting is at the Charleston Place Hotel, which I think is 23.5 miles from where we're sitting now, that no town or public funds be used for lodging or food in connection with this conference, that we would still pay people's, whether they're employees or whether they're people sitting on the dais, we'd still pay for their tuition, if you will, but we would not use town or public monies for lodging or food. And before anybody tweets something, the reason it doesn't say alcohol is we're forbidden by law already from using town or public funds on alcohol. That's the resolution.
Mayor, may I speak?
Yes, sir.
I am not going to charge the town for any of my expenses, but I believe we are elected officials, independent of each other, and we can make our own decisions. And I trust that everybody on that dais is going to do the same thing. I'm not against it, but I'm not going to vote to tie another councilman's hands.
I just want to be clear that nothing prevents what you suggest that you're doing, what you say you're doing, and you suggest that everybody on the dais is doing. Anybody, if we want to meet for dinner and pay our own way, or we'd rather stay in the Charleston Place Hotel than our own houses 20-ish miles, 25-ish miles away, we're free to do that. We should just pay our own way.
I agree.
Mr. Mayor, I agree with Councilman Jackson. I do think that Mr. McIntosh's resolutions is a little bit much. I think if a council member, I know many smaller towns do exactly what Mr. Jackson is suggesting. If you want to go to a meeting that you want to pay your own way, they do that. I guess they do it because they don't have the budgets that we do. But the municipal association meetings is a great time to get with other council members and learn new ideas and socialize. And it helps a lot as far as understanding how you can serve the people that you serve a little bit better. So I think we're all adults, and you know, if the budget's tight or whatever, and we want to go, that's fine. If we want to spend our own money, that's fine. I agree with Mr. Jackson.
Mr. Mayor, oh, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
I was just, I was concerned and I wanted to kind of speak to the body about, is there any risk from such a constrictive resolution to where the food purchase is not included? You know, food is included in your tuition. And because you call out food specifically, are we at risk at being some maybe sued, or, you know, somebody would say that we violated something that we approved because tuition includes food that is at the event? I'm just asking because I'm not fully, this is my first time, so I'm not aware.
The luncheon is a separate item. You're correct that there is a reception that includes food that's part of the tuition. There is, they give you coffee and snacks in the morning, but was specifically talking about, and I'm happy to amend, using taxpayer dollars for town council or appointed officials, like, you know, the town attorney and the town clerk are not employees, they're appointed officials. Or some of our key employees, like our town administrator and others, go to this conference most years. The intent was, as far as food, that we not do what we've typically done when the conference was in Greenville or Hilton Head, and have the town taxpayers pay for us to go to dinner together. If I need to spell it out that clearly, I would amend the food item to allow our regular tuition to get us coffee and snacks.
I'm not sure what Mr. McIntosh is getting around to, but you know what we've done before over the years, over the last lot of years, you know, certain staff members and the town council definitely have gone to conventions and they've paid for their registration, certainly, and they've paid for their rooms, and they've paid for their meals, and they've paid for their meals when they went out together, usually at least one meal where the council and department heads went out together. Now, he's got to explain it, what he wants the town to pay for, because he hadn't said that. So, you know, several of us are going to the convention, and, you know, and several of us can afford to do it, whether the town pays for it or not. But, you know, I would like to see the town pay for what they've always paid for. I don't care if it's in Charleston or it's in Jedburgh. They've always done this, and, you know, I don't see the big deal why all of a sudden he wants some resolution passed that he's gonna try to change what we've always done. I mean, next year, I don't know where the conference is gonna be, but if he's gonna change it, let's change it no matter where we go. Whether we go to Greenville, whether we go to Hilton Head, or wherever we go, let's set one priority of wherever we go. Just because we're going to Charleston, 25 miles away, or whether we're going to Hilton Head, Myrtle Beach, or wherever we're going, don't come up here and say, okay, we're going to Charleston, because we've been to Charleston numerous times, and we hadn't cut off what we spent for council or our department heads we've taken with us, whoever makes that decision, you know, that we cut them out or cut out us having dinner with them, I mean, he made some comment about us having saltine crackers and well,
Sardines, yeah, that was my
He
comment.
didn't say, he didn't
That was a
say-
private comment too, Mr. Mayor,
He
but I
didn't
kind of
say-
like it when you
It
share.
wasn't private. If you send something to me, it ain't private. You better,
I'm learning,
yeah, you better believe that. It
but
ain't
I'm
private if you send it to
happy
me.
for you to share, Mr. Mayor.
So, you know, because I don't do that stuff. I don't do that.
I'm happy for you to share, Mr. Mayor.
Whatever y'all call it, what you call
It was an email.
it? Anyway, it doesn't matter what you call it. Y'all send it over to, whatever it is. But you learn not to send it to me because the one you sent is, me and Terry being big spenders and being taxpayers, is posted on my wall in my office.
All of it?
Yeah.
Even the part about making Bernie Sanders blush with your spending and taxes?
Go in there and look at it. It's on my wall. You know?
I think we're
mean-
getting a little astray.
Yes, we
Yeah,
are.
yeah. You know, Terry and I can't spend one nickel. It takes four of us.
Mr. Mayor, if I could.
But anyway, going back to that, all I'm saying is the
I apologize
Charleston-
for the Bernie Sanders remark too, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, that's on there too. Yeah, compare me with Bernie Sanders. That's a trip. But anyway, Bill, say what your motion is.
I think the resolution speaks for itself. Everyone is free to go to the conference. The town would pay people's registration. The town wouldn't pay for your meals outside of registration. The town wouldn't pay for your lodging at the Charleston Place Hotel or anywhere else when we all live 25 miles away. I probably won't pack saltines and sardines, but it was a thought.
Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Vienna sausages, I'm sorry, it was not sardines. It was saltines and Vienna sausages. Thank you, Mr. Parker.
I read this resolution and what I see, what I understand is because of our current budget, because of taxes and everything that this kind of stuff that's going on right now, me in my right mind, I could not go to this meeting and have my constituents, the residents of the town, pay for my $30 or $40 meal that evening when I know that they're going to have to look at a tax increase in the future. And so that's how I look at it. You know, if we were going to up to Greenville, a little bit different situation because it is so far away. If I choose to go to this meeting, I'd go ahead and just drive my car down there for the day and I would come back. And that's how I see this. And that's why I'm going to go ahead and vote for it this year.
And Kimma, I agree with you completely. And I'm going to do the same thing and not charge the meals. I have a problem in principle with one councilman making the rules for everybody else. I'm going to live by the
rules. I'm trying to get a resolution of council. If council doesn't agree that we, for this year, for this conference, 23 miles away, that we should prohibit the use of public funds for lodging and food, that's fine by me.
I agree 110%. What I don't agree with is a councilman telling me how to make my decisions.
I'm just saying, I'm not telling you how to make your decisions. I'm just saying we don't spend public money on our decisions.
I agree.
You agree? Okay.
Based on the summary of the spirit of the resolution, which I appreciate you pointing out, I agree with the spirit of the resolution. So thank you.
Okay, do we have a motion and a second? We do. Okay, all in favor of Bill's resolution signify by raising your hand and voting aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, vote no.
Nay.
Nay.
What is it?
3 to 4. Motion fails.
Huh?
3 to 4, motion fails.
Okay. Motion failed?
Yep.
Okay.
Consideration of State Aid Tax Advisory Committee 2022 recommendations for funding.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, because I serve on the board of one of these organizations, the Flowertown Players, and would have to, and I will recuse myself. I would ask, even though I know it's been a long meeting, I would ask that we take these up individually.
Can we approve all of them except the Flowertown Players?
If someone makes that motion.
I make a motion, we approve the recommendation with the exception of Flowertown Players.
I'll second that.
Okay, we got a motion and a second that we approve all of them
With the exception of Flowertown Players.
with the exception of Flowertown Players on the counter bill. Got a second?
Yeah.
Is that a second? Any discussion?
Yeah, I've got some information, a little bit of discussion. On these applicants, are these all the applications that were submitted, or were there some that were denied?
These were all that were submitted.
On the right, on the middle column, Mr. Brown, under 22 recommended, there's a Southeastern Wildlife Exposition, and one of the 3 Flowertown Players requested, there's $0 by them. So this appears to be all of them.
And the second question I've got is are these the same organizations that were funded with ATAX money last year?
Not all of them, but the ones that were funded last year, the ones that did reapply are on here, if that's what you're asking. Does that make sense?
I think it's a good idea to help some of these organizations, but what I'm afraid of is we keep seeing the same organizations come forward every year and get funds from ATAX, and it's starting to become an entitlement. So that's my concern. And I don't know, perhaps, we should be looking at casting a wider net to try to be more inclusive. We have over 50,000 people in this town and a lot of organizations. So we want to make sure that we're just not giving the money to the same people over and over and excluding some other people who may have a need for the money.
And I would just want to point out for the public, because I know some people here are pretty upset about some of our taxing and spending, and to clarify perhaps for some of us on the dais, this is a state accommodation tax money. Under the statute, this money, a portion of the state accommodations tax money must be appropriated, must be sent to outside organizations as long as they meet the criteria of promoting tourism. So in the past, we used to all have a second fund of money that distributed money to some of these same nonprofit organizations using hospitality tax funds. That was not mandatory. It was something that we did by tradition, which this year will be the second year in a row that we have not funded any of these organizations through the H tax because we had the ability not to, and it's tight financial times, tight budgetary times. This money is separate from our budget, and we're mandated by state law to distribute it.
And I
But
think that
my point is state law doesn't mandate who we give it to.
No, I got it. I just wanted people to understand it.
They meet the criteria. I'm just thinking, I keep seeing the same names over and over. Maybe we're not casting a wide enough net to be more inclusive. That's all I'm saying.
I think we do advertise it so that any organization can apply for it. So if you're suggesting that we do more advertising than we already do, that's not my expertise. But I would ask staff to make sure that we're casting as
you make
wide
a good
advertising
point.
as we
That
can.
might be the way to reach out to more people by finding more venues to advertise in. Sometimes the ads are run only in certain venues and a lot of people are left out. So that's a good idea about the ads. Maybe that's
Yeah.
something we should consider.
Okay, any, got a motion on this?
There is a motion.
There's a motion, we got a second? Okay, all in favor, signify by raising your right hand, saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. It's carried. What else we got?
Is Flower Town players correct, Mr. McIntyre?
Yes.
Mayor, I would make a motion that we
Approve the recommended amount for the Flower Town players within this recommended group.
Second.
Oh,
Okay, motion made, second. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by raising right hand, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. It's carried.
I abstain for the record.
Okay, and we got,
Consideration of renewal of the Yellowstone maintenance contract for the 199 interchange.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make that motion that we go ahead and renew the
yeah,
contract with
I thought we were
Yellowstone
going to
Maintenance.
executive session.
second.
Okay. All in favor of this, signify by raising your right
Could
hand.
we-
vote
Mr. Mayor, if
Yeah.
I just want to ask a question for discussion. I just want to clarify, this is for 2 years versus 1 year? Is,
correct.
okay. Oh, she already left. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. All right, thanks.
Okay, we vote.
motion second, all in favor.
All right, all in favor of this, signify by raising your right hand, vote
Aye.
Opposed likewise. It's carried. Okay. Comments.
For public comment, Cheryl Mendoza.
Good evening. My name is Cheryl Mendoza. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. I'm fairly new to Somerville and I have invested some time learning the local political structure here. I've bothered all of you with email questions, and this is where I'd like to publicly thank Terry Jenkins. He's a public service who understands constituent services. He answers my emails quickly or calls in response to my concerns. This is an art form almost lost today, and I appreciate that it has not disappeared where he is concerned. My reason for bending your ear this evening is my concern over Petland being given a business license to operate here. I've been told they are a legitimate business and support the tax base of our community. But are they a good neighbor? Are they the type of business that's good for us? A strip club might be a legitimate business, but would you want one next door to the high school? Or a marijuana dispensary with a tattoo parlor attached? It's not just my opinion that they are a bad actor. It's pretty much an open secret. Petland supports abusive practices by sourcing their animals from puppy mills. They have such a poor reputation. You can read all about them on the U.S. Humane Society's horrible 100 list of nationwide bad actors. And I quote, as the only national pet store chain in the United States that still sells puppies, Petland is also the largest retailer of puppy mill dogs. While Petland claims their puppies come from only reputable breeders and are all in good health, our investigations have proven otherwise, end of quote. Petland has been sued in Somerville as well as Charleston. In 2020, a group of low-country consumers filed a negligence lawsuit for knowingly selling sick and mistreated animals. In the same year, the Orlando Sentinel ran a lead story. Petland has a long history of complaints over sick and dying puppies. The reports done by the Humane Society are posted online in gruesome detail, along with photos that are difficult to see. There's a Somerville group dedicated to picketing and protesting the store. I would ask that you read about Petland on the Humane Society's website at humanesociety.org or blog.humanesociety.org and consider revoking their license to do business anywhere in Somerville. We are surrounded by groups, shelters, and rescue groups doing their best to set the bar high for animal welfare. Perhaps you will agree that this bad actor does not deserve our support and is in conflict with the mission statement passed by this body. I thank you again for your time and attention.
Ms. Linda Wetzel?
My name is Linda Ames Wetzel. I reside at 108 Atlantic Street. First of all, I don't know whether or not the police chief is here. I want to thank him very much for the job that they did. I was going out of town, but I had to change the plans. But I went to the police department and tried to tell the dispatcher who was on the window that I was not going out of town. And lo and behold, my yard was flooded with policemen in the yard because the dispatcher did not relay the message that I did not go out of town. But they did their job. They came over and they found the car in my yard and they were investigating, and I applaud them for doing their job. But the dispatcher, they need to learn common sense. If you tell them the next day was a holiday, so who was I supposed to report it to? And they wasted my brother's time sitting across the street, and he wanting to know what's going on, why the police is all in my yard, searching around to see why this car is in the yard. He knew we were out of town. But my car, I told him my car, nothing would be in the yard, but I had to leave my car. And I also would like to thank Stormwater Drainage. They finally cleaned the ditches on Atlantic Street. The ditches were so clogged up, you couldn't even see the pipe. And they came out and spent the day cleaning out Atlantic Street. But lo and behold, it rained again, and they're just about full up again. All the debris, the straw and everything has filled up again. So when it rains again or 2 more times, the flooded water will be all over. I got my behind eaten up in my backyard because of the flooding. The infestation of mosquitoes that is in my backyard because of nobody cleaning the ditches. And that's not the ditch from the town. That's the one behind me. And somebody has to do something about that. On Somerville and Marion Avenue, please, somebody has to cut those azaleas, because you have to pull out in the road in order to see if you're making a left or right turn, but you can't see because of the debris, the bushes all around. You can't see. What is it? So Shepherd Street and Parkwood Drive, where they built those houses. Somebody has got to do their job. They have trucks parked in the stop sign where you can't even go to the stop sign and look left or right to go. They built a house over there. They got boats, 2 or 3 of them. The yard isn't even big enough for a match to stay in, but still yet they put all these big old boats over there, block the traffic, and the big holes that are in Parkwood Drive now. By the construction that's going on day by day, the trucks going on, and they still are tearing up the sidewalks because they want to put $400,000 homes, 3 or 4 on one particular lot. The building in Somerville is ridiculous the way that the construction, the flooding and everything. Look at Mr. Millhouse house and look at our road when the flooding is. Somebody is not doing their job about the top of the way the storm water drains on those streets. You don't care. All you want is the $1 million bucks or money you supposed to be impact fees to get when you build a house over there. These contractors don't have nothing invested in Somerville unless they just want to build a house and get back to where they want to get. And you suck it up and you sell South Carolina away. Like I said in the county council meeting the other night, $26 and a bunch of bees bought Manhattan. What is South Carolina being paid for? To be bought by these unscrupulous developers and people who are trying to take South Carolina away. You should be ashamed of yourselves.
Mr. Mayor, I don't have anyone else signed up for public comment.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion, we go into executive session, discuss personnel matter related to vacant seat on the Board of Architectural Review.
Second.
Okay, motion made. We go into executive session. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. We go into executive session.